We are recording. Hey everybody, Sean Murphy with 1455. Excited to be back for the ongoing 1455 interview series, but this is a series within the series. We are now on author number 2 of our Monday night event. As a reminder, our November 1455 author series event is a crime fiction writers panel hosted by myself and Ed Amar. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern time on Monday, and we'll be streaming that live to Facebook. Check out our website for more info about that. But the second of our 4 writers is L.A. or, oh my goodness, Lori. I was going to say Leslie. Lori Chandlar, L.A. Chandlar, as you will see on her books, is an award-winning national best-selling author with Kensington Publishing. The Silver Gun, which is book 1 in the Art Deco mystery series, debuted in 2017. The Gold Pawn, which was the best historical Agatha-nominated Silver Falchion finalist, was released in 2018. And book 3, The Pearl Dagger, Suspense Magazine's 2019 Book of the Year, best historical Agatha-nominated, Lefty-nominated GANYC winner, was released in September 2019. Lori takes a fresh look at the innovative and artful side of 1930s New York City and features Mayor Fiorella LaGuardia. Her Fight to Keep Creativity Alive series focuses on creativity and how it helps us work, play, and live more fully. She lives in New York City with her family, and we are delighted to have her here. Lori, LA, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Right on. So first off, did I pronounce the mayor's name right? Shame on me. Fiorello?
Fiorello, you got it.
Yeah. Okay. An interviewer has to do their homework, and I thought I had that, but I should have made absolute sure. All right. Great to have you here. We're looking forward to Monday, but we've got business to settle first. So let me make sure that we are on the clock, as I always do, and we will jump in. So folks, 14 minutes, 55 seconds. Let's go. What is the first book that made you want to be a writer, or a book that changed your life?
You know, there's a million I could choose, but the 2 that kept standing out when I thought about the question was The Count of Monte Cristo and Coming Home by Rosamund. Both really make you feel deeply for the characters involved and the plot and the world. And I always love Maya Angelou's quote that people remember how you make them feel. And I'm even using that quote in a current work in progress that I'm working on. And I think those 2 books made me feel so much that I thought about how wonderful it would be to, like, if you could create that for other people. It was a long time ago, but I'm a big reader, and I read those books ages ago, but ever since I read them, that's what planted the seed.
Right on. Okay. If you could say, who would you name as your most profound artistic influence? Oh, we froze up for a second, but you're back.
You're glitching a little. So
Yep.
Is it my most major artistic influence?
Yeah, your most profound artistic influence, or one of them anyway.
For me, it's actually New York City. We were just talking about New York right before we started the interview. And I have loved living here. I've lived here almost 20 years, and I never lived in a big city before then. And I feel like over the years, it is so inspiring to me, from the history to you spontaneously come upon all sorts of inspiration all the time, from really funny things that happen with people on the sidewalks to beautiful things that just appear out of nowhere. And I love that spontaneity. I always had to plan those kinds of events. Every other place that I've lived in the country, where here you kind of run into it. And I feel like no matter what age you are, how we're young or old, inexperienced, experienced, people are constantly learning new things and trying new things. And to me, that is so inspiring. So I feel like the city, and I write about the city a lot in articles, and then my Art Deco series takes place in New York City. And yeah, absolutely, that's been the most major artful influence in my life.
Hard to find a better one, right? That's the cultural capital of everything, food and music included, very much so. So easy
Definitely.
to understand why you'd say that. How about an album or movie or both that you recommend without reservation?
Star Trek. I love Star Trek movies. I'm a total geek about them. I love the new ones and how they mirror the old ones, and I
Yep.
am total
Yep.
geek on that. But I also the newest one is more of a Netflix series, the Queen's Gambit. I've been recommending that all over the place. It is such a good series and so thoughtful and thought provoking. I thought it was wonderful. And albums, I'm all over the place. I listen to everything from the Rat Pack and like vintage stuff to I love rock. I just put a whole bunch of AC/DC songs in my latest book, and all sorts. So I love music. So I toured with my husband. Was in a rock band for several years, and I toured with him, managing the band for about 5 years.
Wow.
So in the mid '90s. So I love music a lot. I'm a little hard of hearing because of that, but that's what you do.
Yeah, you got to pay a price for that kind of joy, right?
Worth it.
I love it. I love it. All right, so a little change of pace. This is an impossible one, I concede, but what's the best first or last line of any book ever, or one of them, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's tough. Two came to mind right away, and one was because I just watched the latest Rebecca movie makeover by Daphne du Maurier, and
Hmm.
I hadn't read that book since I was a teenager, but I've always remembered that front line of "Tonight I dreamt I went to Manderley again," and here's a book that I'd seen when I was a teenager, and as soon as the movie starts, and they say that opening scene. I was just taken right back, and I love that, and I love Erin Morgenstern's Night Circus, and it just says the circus arrives without warning, and there's something about those both of them that inspire your curiosity immediately, and when you look back on the book, they make you have these instantaneous moments of remembering key parts of the book or the movie, and I love that.
Right on. Well, thank you, because neither of those have been mentioned yet. So that's always a perk when we get to recommend, ones outside of what some of the more common responses we get. Um, how about an underrated author, in your opinion, that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Well, I have a lot. I read a lot of a wide variety of books, and one that he's actually a good friend of mine, but he's been nominated left and right this year, so he's not that underrated. But Gabriel Valjean is a good friend, and I feel like his books are so unique in the history that he brings to the table, and he's got a lot of wonderful wordplay, and I feel like when you read it, you're taken in not only by the story but the actual writing, and I really like that a lot. So yeah, his and I actually mentioned him in another book. The Naming Game that he wrote is about like 1950s Hollywood, and
Mhm.
so I always love that era too. And it's about like the McCarthyism and all that. So yeah,
Cool.
I
Well,
think
thanks for that. Thanks for exposing that. Hopefully, people watching this will go and be inspired to check that out. Um, Deeply meaningful question for me, if no one else. Why have you not read Moby Dick? Or if you have, is there a classic that you've been meaning to get around to?
I have read Moby Dick. I'm
Woo!
not crazy about. I'm not,
Yeah. Wow.
I always fight with classics because I either love them or hate them. So I always feel guilty. The first one that came to mind with that was Fahrenheit 451, because I feel like I should love it, and I read it at a time that I wasn't ready for a dystopian thing, and I only got like several pages in and then got mad at it. So I feel guilty that I haven't read it. So that one.
Well, and you
So
know
yeah.
what's funny? That a lot of the classics that come up in this series, are these long, deep, impenetrable books. That's actually a pretty accessible. So if you ever are inspired to return to it, it's actually digestible. Some of these other books,
Totally.
that's a commitment.
I
So
think I didn't even got mad at it. I've read like all the Dickens, even really big ones, and like Crime and Punishment. I can handle it, but now I guess I was mad at it. I'm not sure.
yeah, well, it's definitely not an uplifting topic or book by any means. So there's that. All right, so change of pace, and I think your bio probably gives this away. But what is there a single theme or topic that your work tends to address?
I write about the 1930s a lot, and I actually have two new books that are standalones that are completely not in that era, totally different genres. But what I'm finding about is that the whole point of writing the 1930s books, the Art Deco series, was that I love the idea of beauty out of adversity. And that keeps coming out in these other books that I'm working on too, even in different eras. I always feel like the 30s got pigeonholed into being only about the Depression, and
Yeah.
there was so much vitality and humor and art going on that I wanted to tell that side of the story, because I felt like it really says a lot for us today. And then the more I'm writing these other books too, I always have art in the background of a lot of my books. So I think that beauty out of adversity is definitely a theme that I love.
What a great answer. Thank you for that. And also, gosh, how appropriate for the insane times we're living in now.
Yeah.
Um, if we can't make art and beauty and community out of these times, we're lost. So thank you for celebrating that and carrying that torch forward for sure.
My
Uh,
pleasure.
okay, I usually combine the next two questions because it seems like a variation on a theme. So what talking about writing routines and whether or not you believe in them, and writer's block and whether or not you believe in it or have experienced it. Talk to us about how you approach that and if you have a routine at all.
I always say it's important to really analyze the era of life that you're in right now, and not to be worried if it doesn't match up with the previous one. I do believe in writer's block in a sense that it's you can just get stuck, even if it's not you're worried about the blank page. Maybe you're stuck with figuring out a routine or not. For me right now, before the pandemic, I tended to write a lot in the morning, for several hours, and then I do all my marketing and stuff later on. Right now, I work better in the late afternoon. It may be because it's around happy hour. I'm not sure, but I just write better. And it might be because my family's home, during the day, and I'm working on college applications, and, we're juggling. When I first started writing, I waited and waited and waited to figure out how to write, because everybody had these routines that they were doing that I couldn't do. And I finally figured it out for me. And for me, it was just setting aside like 2 hours once a week. I got a sitter and I planted my butt at the nearest coffee shop and just wrote. And if I got more time, great. If I didn't, don't care. Like it was something to start with and let it keep growing. And then really, a lot of times I wrote that first book late at night. I would end up making like a pillow cubicle in bed, so my husband wouldn't see the glare of the computer. Because I even asked, I was like, I can go in another room. He's like, I don't care. And so I must have written, thousands of thousands of words, like at 1 a.m, at night in my pillow cubicle. So that worked then. So right now it's a little bit more in the afternoons that works better for me. It's most important though, I think, if you just pick small increments and do it consistently, you can always increase it. But most people get stuck on choosing something too big and then they just don't do it.
Yeah, and what one theme that's resurfaced in this series is the notion that, to an extent, writer's block is a luxury, because if you have the time, that's what most writers, or most successful writers, or most writers that are successful at writing, they are so hungry for that opportunity to write. When they do have the time or make the time, that becomes a priority. So I think there's this kind of unraveling mystery that's not so mysterious. It's really all about, you've got to put it as a priority, and then everything else follows.
Yeah, you can't just wait for inspiration to strike, because sometimes it does. And if you can grab 2 seconds, even just to write a couple thoughts down on your phone, great. But if you wait for it, there's never a perfect time. There's just not.
Yep.
So you have to just make it happen. Yeah.
Indeed. Okay. How about a setback, artistic or otherwise, that maybe ended up putting you on the trajectory that you found yourself on now?
Um, for me, it was what you asked about, like what helped me get my career started. Is that what the question was? It was, the first thing was just writing consistently, and then getting to a point where I could call myself a writer. And then I felt like that really helped. And then the career part was actually jumping into more of the writing scene. I wish that I had started going to conferences and things like that a lot earlier. I thought you had to wait till you were a published author to go to those. I didn't understand how they worked, how the connections you make, how you learn so much about writing there. And I feel like that's one of the best steps to in making a career or something that is more than just a little hobby or something you just enjoy, but something that you really feel you want to put effort and drive into, whatever you call it, even if it's not a full-time career. It's something serious, and I like that a lot.
Okay. How about, so along those lines, has there been one or two or one particular setback that you overcame and made you a better writer?
Yeah, this year has been, I mean, so hard on so many levels for many of us. And I had a lot of personal stuff going on. It was even beforehand, there were social justice issues that I was dealing with in the publishing world. And we'll talk about that a little bit on Monday.
Sure.
And it's hard, when you have things that are difficult personally, things that make you fatigued, or maybe it's illness, or maybe it's stress of other different kinds. It's really hard, and you find I was very distracted. You can get to moments where you're really defeated because you're so tired. But I felt like, art, I do teach a lot about creativity in the corporate world and one-on-one with people. And one of the most interesting things about creativity is it gives back. Like, it's not just about maintaining stress. Like, I totally believe in exercise and travel, and those things, feed into you. But there's something about creativity that feeds your soul, and it's in different ways than anything else. And I feel like it's therapeutic. I feel like the time you put in, it's not linear. It doesn't always give back just what you put in. I think I get way more out than what I actually am putting into it. And I feel like if you can just overcome, like I said, even if it's just little bits, even if you're just doing 100 words or you put a timer on. I remember my agent, Paula Meunier, writes careerauthors.com, and one of her articles was about if you just sit down, and even if you're writing garbage or literally blah, 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 and it's just like something eventually clicks in. And you start writing, whether it's the book or the article or whatever. And I fully believe that. I think if you can push through it a little bit, give yourself a lot of grace. I think it does make you a better writer, a better artist, because anything that's difficult makes you usually more aware. Maybe you see different aspects about yourself, other people, your surroundings, and I feel like that's what writers are best at, is how do you articulate that? And so, I think that's that.
Home run. I mean, there's no wrong answers to any of these questions, but that's a fantastic answer. And for me personally, very inspiring. I like that. That's a good reminder of what we all are dealing with, and how to kind of have a really forward-looking and positive attitude, because that's probably more than half the battle. So I think a good segue follow-up to that is, if you could define or explain, what does literary success mean to you?
Everybody's different and I think you have to define that for yourself. For me, the first point of success was it's hard, I think, at first to call yourself a writer. We all have imposter syndrome. Everybody does. I've talked to massively famous artists and writers, and they still have it. So that's it. For me, one of my first goals was I just really wanted to see my book at Barnes & Noble. I just really wanted that. And I think when you can define things that to you, that's like, to me, that was my first thing that I wanted to achieve. And I think I would love to I've been on a Barnes & Noble bestseller list and whatnot, but I'd love to be on other bestseller lists. And I think that will achieve a certain amount of success. But honestly, for me, it's about enjoying that writing process and continuing it. And the relationships in the industry are a completely surprising perk that I never saw coming. And to me, like, getting to be part of that and part of something bigger where I'm investing in other people, they're investing in me, in friendship, encouragement, helping each other with blurbs. There's something about this, just being part of that process and continuing writing, that to me is very successful. And I feel like when I didn't really care about some people really wanted to write the next greatest American novel. And I'm like, that'd be great. But that's not, I don't want to just write a book and then, check and then move on. I think my heart is really in it. And so to me, that ongoing process is success.
Again, I mean, so not surprisingly, variations of that answer have resurfaced throughout this series. And I think what we're just establishing, beyond any dispute, is that it's a process, it's a lifestyle, and it's all rather hollow if you don't have solidarity and a community that you can both share the successes with, commiserate when times are tough, because it's a very rejection-laden enterprise, but this notion of sharing it and helping others who then help you is very genuine. I certainly believed it way before this series, but this series, it's not a coincidence that just continues to resurface. So it's very inspiring and empowering to hear you kind of affirm that.
I love hearing that that's a theme. That's so great.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, it's not surprising when you really peel it back that I think unless you're talking about, either some pretty antisocial individuals or people that just had tremendous success early on and maybe didn't need a community, although those are some of the most unhappy people. I think those of us that have, worked hard and met with not immediate or sustained success understand how hard it is and how serious it is as a lifestyle. So we can't help but support and encourage each other.
I love that. It's true.
Okay, well, you've already dropped a lot of wisdom and knowledge, but to cap it off, how about a 1-minute exhortation for a beginning writer looking for advice?
I would definitely say just start writing. Again, like what we talked about, don't wait for the perfect time, the perfect amount of energy, the perfect space. You're never going to get it. I had someone tell me that I told them about, I wanted to make start writing a novel. And I was just telling him how I was going to start it. And someone actually said to me, well, you have to wait until you get a 10-week beach retreat. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? Have you talked to any authors, real ones? so don't do that. Don't wait for the 10-week beach retreat. Just start. I would say definitely jump into the community. Sisters in Crime has stuff all over the place. Going to any of the conferences that you can go to at, the Boucher Cons, Thriller Fests. There's so many. Malice Domestic, Left Coast Crime. You meet other authors. You meet other writers who are just starting out. You meet readers galore, and you learn about your craft. And so that learning about your craft is something that we will all do till we die. Like that's just part of it. And also, I always suggest going to that careerauthors.com too. Is a great resource for all writers always get a million questions from aspiring writers and people in general. And that's such a great resource that I continually go back to. I had to write a synopsis. Gosh, don't we all hate writing synopsises? And I'm always needing help with that. So I went to it recently and I'm like, querying synopsis. And, so it's a really great resource. So the people of the conferences, just start writing and then looking up really good resources to answer your questions helps a lot.
Fantastic. Well, Lori L.A. Chandlar, thank you for being here. If people want to check you out online, how do they find you?
I am on all social media under L.A. Chandlar. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and my website is lachandlar.com. And all my books, you can look up even just Art Deco. Usually that comes up if you're interested in those. And definitely keep in touch.
Okay, and I will put, those of you watching, I will put all that information in the description in our YouTube video. So you don't have to write that down. It'll be right there, an embedded link. And as a reminder, if you enjoyed this, and I know you did, you're going to get more of it Monday. So hang in there till Monday night, where Lori and 3 other writers will be joining us for a wide-ranging discussion on crime fiction and in particular, what's gone on in that genre in the last year. So for now, Lori, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing, like I said, some real positive wisdom and inspiration. I certainly enjoyed it. I hope everyone watching did too, and we'll talk to you again soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll talk soon.